And so how does the audition for Rough Cutt come about?
Well, at first, what happened is I was living in my car.
I remember
All
that.
I had was a
Yeah.
guitar. Yeah. And then I had done a favor for a friend.
And you were in San Diego? Sorry to interrupt, but you were in San Diego?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I had done a favor for a friend. I was working at a warehouse at one point, so I was able to get out of the car for a little while. And I let him stay in my apartment for a little bit until he got back on his feet. And then I ended up back in the car again for a little while. So he ended up hooking up with a friend of his whose father gave him a house. And that's how he made his money, was that he would rent out rooms. And so he asked his friend, hey, could this Craig guy, stay here for a little bit? So he said, yeah. So it was a couch without any cushions where the dogs would sleep on. So it smelled like dogs and had dog hair all over it. But hey, it was better than the car. But that house had a phone. And that's how they reached me. Because I didn't know this, but meanwhile, that other side, prior to that, I was in a band with a guy named Perry McCarty, who was in San Diego. He had a real powerful voice, and I thought, wow, this is going to be great. And he moved up to LA to join that band Warrior. And he felt bad. He felt like he left me behind. And so he said, hey, give me your demo and I'll pass it around. So I gave him a demo that I made with my last $20 for giving lessons. And Rough Cutt and Warrior, those two bands were friends. So they got the demo from my friend Perry McCarty, and then that demo went to Ronnie. So now that I've met everybody, I hear the story went, we got to get this kid up here. Because what was happening is that everybody in the band Rough Cutt was trying to get their friend in the band so they could monopolize the writing so they could make more publishing. And it was kind of going astray, and Ronnie was more about what's best for the band, not what's best for the individual. So he goes, we got to get this kid up here. But how do you find a kid who lives in his car? So they found me. They actually rented me gear. They rented me an amp and cables and everything because I didn't have it. So they were already being kind to me before I even met him. And the night before, he calls and says he wants to meet me. He's going to be at the audition because he wanted to oversee the audition to make sure it went well. I didn't know that either. I just knew he was going to be there the night before, so that scared the living daylights out of me. And then I didn't know that he never sits in with other bands. But that night, after him and I talked, he got inspired and he sat in on the audition, and we did Man on the Silver Mountain in Heaven and Hell together. My very first night meeting him, I'm playing music with him.
How incredible.
And then at the end of the night, before we left, I said, God, I hope I get this. And he goes, kid, if I have anything to do with it, you already got it. And then sure enough, that night I'm sitting on his couch in his house, just the two of us watching old Rainbow videos like we were old friends. And it was just like, wow. And then one late night session while we were recording demos, now that we're, fast forward, now that I'm in the band and we're recording demos, Wendy's my manager. She's both the manager of the band, but also my personal manager. And then Ronnie looks at me and says, kid, if Viv ever doesn't work out, you'd be my first choice. And that's where it all started from.
And this is like
1983.
1983. Unbelievable. So it's just after Holy Diver?
Actually, before. Yeah, because sometimes we'd be hanging out so late that he would literally go over and he wouldn't let me help him because that was his way. He liked to serve his guests. So he would go bring a mattress, put sheets on it and a blanket and a pillow, tuck me in like a father to a child, and give me headphones to listen to Holy Diver before it was even finished. That's who Ronnie James Dio was and always was to me. It was just this kind-hearted man who was it just blew your mind with kindness. And I never got over it. I was always nervous every time I was around him, because it was a dream come true for me. And you don't get, and I suppose people do get over it, but I didn't. Every time I was on my way to his house, even when we were recording demos for Dream Evil, I had to pull over and kind of take some deep breaths and go, okay, you can do this,
And what about your first impression on Holy Diver? Anything stand out from listening to that or what you thought?
Yeah, actually, here's something I don't think anyone's ever been told before. Ronnie was living in a house in Tarzana at the time. And they had just finished, and we were listening to it. It was almost like a little listening party. The band was there, and Angelo was there. And I was the only one from Rough Cutt there. And Perry's band Warrior came out with a song called Fighting for the Earth. That was like the number one most requested song on KLOS.
Oh, of course, I remember that.
So I this is the God's honest truth. It was the craziest thing. Ronnie would love to pull me aside. I guess it started from when we first met, is that, everybody was suddenly Ronnie's fan because they wanted to get the gig for Rough Cutt. But I was a real fan. And so we talked about his lyrics and stuff. And I must have said something to him that unlocked his code, because he grabbed my arm. He said, that's right, that's right. Little did I know that was going to happen for almost 30 years. I would say something that meant something to him. He'd grab my arm and go, that's right, that's right. Like, even when he was in heaven and hell, he would call me at home and say, Goldy, I got to read you these lyrics, because he knew I could figure them out what they meant. I guess he really liked that, because he writes such amazing lyrics, but they're very all-encompassing. They're not only just about one thing, and that's what he liked about that. I could interpret everything that he means about it, because one song isn't about just one thing, it's about many things. And sometimes it's about the same subject, but he's talking about both sides of opposing sides with a dark theme, but a positive message. That's when he grabbed my arm. It's like, yeah, that's right, that's right. So here I am at home, and he's in heaven and hell, and he calls me at home because he goes, Goldy, I wrote these lyrics. I wanted to see, I thought of you. So he called me to read me his lyrics. It's things like that you just don't get over, that's like, so we had this kind of connection so it was just, so anyways, we're at his house and we're listening to Holy Diver. And he looks over to me and he goes, you think this is going to work? I go, what do you mean? He goes, this whole thing. And he go, me and the band. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is amazing. There's something for everybody on this album. He goes, yeah, but he goes, look at me. I'm not like David Coverdale or any of those guys. And what about this Perry McCarty? Do you think he's going to replace me? I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? No way. He's nowhere near you. And he had a moment of doubt. He doubted himself, and he turned to me. I'm almost in tears thinking about it. And it goes even back to the end. He was when he was struggling with cancer. At one point, his doctors gave him a clean bill of health. They said, you can do whatever you want to do, anything. And everybody thought he was going to go back to heaven and hell because they were making money hand over fist. He was back in the arenas again. And I thought, I was so proud of him. He was back in the arenas, and getting the recognition that he deserved again, instead of some of these smaller places. Not that we didn't like playing smaller places, but it just seemed like he was happy. So we thought he would do that and just sock away money for his retirement. But Wendy goes, what do you want to do? He turns to Wendy and says, I want to write with Craig. And it just, regardless of what people think of me as a guitar player, he was my friend. He was an amazing man, and we were very close. We had very similar work ethics, and I think that's why we just linked, we just connected, and we stayed friends after I had left. He came to my wedding and actually went to my cousin's house for the reception. That says a lot. You leave his band, he's not going to come to your cousin's house for the reception of your wedding if you're not friends. And Wendy was still my manager.